So in 2023, Americans legally wagered over $100 billion on sports, which is 10 times more than just 5 years earlier. Now, obviously, this has everything to do with the fact that we all now have the ability to start gambling all day, every day on our phones, multiple different apps. They're always giving us boosts. They give you free money if you recommend your friends to do it. And this has totally taken off in the past, 5, 6 years. 2018, Supreme Court overturns PASPA, which allows states to regulate betting. And now, I don't know how many states we've got, quite a few where gambling is legal. And as we might have talked about before, we're kind of curious as to what the outcomes of this are going to be on society in the future. So with that being said, welcome to the Modern Symposium. I'm Richie, here with my co-host Nick.
How's it going,
we've
everyone?
got a special guest today, Tommy, coming on here to talk a little bit about gambling. And Tommy, you want to start it off with a little bit of intro about your experience?
Yeah, definitely. So just want to make sure I make it clear that I'm not, any sort of gambling expert. I don't make my living gambling. I have a full-time, career job.
This is not financial advice.
Yes. And yeah, you already mentioned it. So with the overturning of PASPA happening while I was in college and, super into sports, have my entire life, love the NFL, baseball, basketball, everything basically. And, being a, finance guy, finance major, I've always been also interested in how markets operate and, the idea that you could make money by identifying sort of inefficiencies in a market. And so with the overturning of PASPA in school, or while I was in school, I started lightly sports betting, but really having no idea what I was doing. And it wasn't until probably around COVID, like 2019, 2020, that I started taking in a lot of gambling content from people that I would call experts who do mostly make their living from sports betting. And I kind of have an obsessive personality. So it became like my primary core interest. Like Richie could testify to how much I talk about this stuff, offline and everything. And so I really have dove deeply into, what the actual sports betting ecosystem looks like and kind of all the different major players in it. And I myself probably will never be a career winning gambler. At some point, it was actually, what I wanted to eventually make my career. And, through all of that research and actually learning what all this is about, I don't think it's A, something that I could probably do with my skill set, and B, even the people who can, it's not the best life to live. You're constantly grinding. We'll get into the different types of bettors, but either way, you are constantly grinding. You're, living on very finite returns. So a successful sports bettor, your goal is to be able to beat the bookmaker's vig, which requires winning about 53% of the time. The best win at a higher clip, but that still results in an ROI of, 5%, 10% if you're lucky. So you're doing massive volume. You need a very big bankroll to possibly make a living off of it. And that is unrealistic for most people. And you're relying on edges that can go away at any moment.
Yeah, so let's start off there, I guess. So why are you allowed essentially to sports bet? Why are there sports betting companies? Why is it that, when you place bets, what is the house advantage essentially? Like why are they taking these bets?
Just the VIG. So, it's just a business that is willing to allow you to voice your opinion in, through dollars. And their role is just to collect a VIG. So say if the implied probability of an event happening is 50%, you don't get to bet at plus 100. You're probably going to have to pay minus 110. And that 10-cent difference between, betting it at a true 50% implied probability and the number that you actually get to bet is, the bookmaker's take, essentially.
Right. So
yeah. One way that you described it to me, I didn't think about it like this until you said it one time, which was like, I would always think about it. Yeah. Say you're betting at like a minus 120 odds. I would always think like, okay, I'm betting $12 to win 10. But really the way you described it to me one time kind of changed the way I thought about it, which was like, no, you're actually, if it's probably about a 50% odds. You're actually betting $10 to win 10, and that $2 is what you're paying the house. That's their income. They get that no matter what. And
Yeah,
just
we'll kind of
looking at it that way, it's good. Yeah.
we'll definitely get into. There's also different types of bookmakers too, so not all of them are looking to make money the same way. I think a good place to start might be kind of just an overall high level view of the gambling ecosystem, right? And so I would say there are two main groups of winning bettors, and 99% or higher of the people who sports bet are losers. There's less than 1% of people that are doing this thing that are making a income off of it or living or even just winning. And so most of the people you see out there are just frauds. But of that, very small subsection, that 1% of people who actually win at doing this, there's two groups. One of them being originators. Those are probably the type of people that you or, the audience would think of as sports bettors. So these are people that are uh, using a lot of statistics and coding and models to create what they believe a fair price for an outcome is. So whether that be what team wins a game, the spread on a game, player props, those are people that are creating their own number, and they make bets when they believe that the price in the market is wrong. So if I think there is a 60% chance that the Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl, and they're being priced at closer to like a 52, 53% chance, and that's a completely unrealistic edge. Generally, you're not going to have that big of a difference between your numbers and the market numbers. And if there is, it's most likely a sign that there's something wrong for you. But that's when those bettors make bets. They make bets when they believe there are inefficiencies in the market, very similar to why someone would buy a stock. You believe its price is not correct. And so that's probably what you guys think of as what all professional sports bettors are. The second, and I would argue nowadays, bigger group are what is usually referred to as top-down bettors. And so these are people that utilize market knowledge and odds screens to essentially cheat off the work of those originators. And so understanding that sports betting is a market. A lot of people think of Vegas as like this source of truth, and oh, Vegas knows, you can't beat them because Vegas knows, or when a game lands very close to the spread that was out. So point spread was 8.5, a team wins by 8. People are like, oh, Vegas just knows, I lost by the hook. In reality, bookmakers put out a price. So for any given event, the first numbers they put out are what I would call testing the market, or almost just wanting to collect information. So say it's a Sunday night football ends, all the games have happened that day. The lines for the next week come out. These lines are the softest point that the market will have all week. The sportsbooks put out these odds at very low limits. So no person, we already talked about the amount of volume it requires to make a living on these small ROIs. They put out these lines at the beginning of the week, and they allow bettors to make bets at relatively small sizes in order to shape the market for them. So
they won't take big bets initially because they realize that they are not gods, right? So
exactly.
they put it out there, they test the waters. Once smart money starts coming in a certain way, they adjust it. So then later in
Exactly.
the week, they'll allow, like the whales, the guys who don't know what they're doing but have the money to do it, to go in and just lay it down at the closest odds, essentially, that they can get it to.
Exactly. And that's why there is I say relatively because we're still talking about, 1% or less of this total market. But there's a relatively higher number of people that could win betting the NFL on Sunday nights, Monday mornings, maybe even Tuesday, Wednesday. There's almost no one on this planet who can beat Sunday morning NFL lines. You're egotistical to think otherwise, because Sunday morning NFL, if you want to have $1 million on a single game across a few different books, you can do that. And so if you believe that with that level of liquidity in a market, that you're still going to consistently find inefficiencies that no one else did in the billions of dollars that were wagered across that week, you're probably wrong and probably just egotistical. And I think, most winning NFL bettors would tell you the same thing.
Makes sense.
But okay, so yeah, I got a little
Yeah, go ahead.
sidetracked. But so the second biggest group are these top-down bettors, and all they're doing is watching odds screens of certain books. And they make their bets based on seeing the lines change. So they're essentially, another name that they get is steam chasers, because you could think of the line moving is the steam, and these people are chasing steam. And you might say, well, how do they know that the line move is correct? Maybe it was bet by an idiot, and the book moves off of this idiot's action. That's where we're going to get into. There are different models for sports books. There are sharp books and soft books, I would say. Then there's very few sharp books anymore. That used to be what most books were. Now I would say we're down to Circa, Pinnacle, and what's it called, Prime. And so these steam chasers generally only care to watch the movement at these sharp books. And the reason those books are sharp is because they allow winning bettors to continue to bet there at high value. If you're winning on DraftKings, FanDuel, BetMGM, Fanatics, any of these domestic soft books, you're going to get limited to the point that you have no reason to bet there because you can't make an income off doing it. The sharp books, they allow you to continue to bet no matter how much you win there at high volume, because they care more about taking in the information that they get from your bets, because they want to make money by also being on the right side of a bet on top of their VIG. Whereas even like the DraftKings CEO has come out and said it. We do not view this as a thing people can make a living off of. This is for entertainment only. So a book like DraftKings, they only want to make their money off of the VIG. They don't care about having, more action on what they believe to be the right side from information they've collected in bets, while those sharp books do. So I would say the primary group of people that makes money sports betting nowadays are those steam chasers or top-down bettors that are simply just following the bets that are made at those books by smart people and going and betting those same outcomes at these soft books before the line moves.
So let me hop on for a point of emphasis there. May have been missed in some of that. If you are betting, if you're watching this and you're betting on an MGM, a DraftKings, a FanDuel, any of those sites, you are only doing so because they've identified you as a not good enough bettor.
Precisely.
They literally will not allow people to win money off of them.
Yes.
So when you say too, so basically what happens is if you go on FanDuel and you're consistently winning, that signals to them like, okay, this guy actually knows what he's doing. He's probably
and we
watching
just
the
don't want
lines,
his
probably doing all
business.
that.
Yeah.
And so they will then cut you, right?
Haven't you?
Say that again. Sorry.
You've gotten throttled, haven't you?
I have on certain books, yes. Like when Barstool was around, I essentially couldn't bet there. Right now, player props on Fanatics, I can't bet, but I'm not in this top tier of bettors that has to worry about this problem as much. I'm like slightly above break even in my life, which is, good. I'm not losing money, but I'm nothing that anyone is particularly worried about. But
Yeah,
when you see
that, like
these,
a lot of these guys that they're worried about are guys who are betting like hundreds of thousands of dollars consistently.
That's the thing is I also don't like the times I get limited is just simply laughable, because I do not have size that should scare these books. If I want to go bet $100 player prop on Fanatics and they tell me I'm limited to like $13.67, is just hilarious, because like how much damage do you think I'm actually doing to you?
That's crazy.
Even the sports books that I'm not limited on, like FanDuel, I would imagine I do have lower ceiling limits than if you were to just make a fresh account today and they knew nothing about you, or if you were an established loser, but I just never bet enough to reach them. So say if I wanted to, like, you'll see these absolute charlatans online that sell picks and they'll post a slip at like BetMGM for a $10,000 bet. And it's like, you're selling picks with a picture that exposes the fact that you do not win, or else you would never be able to make that bet there. Where, like, you know what I'm saying? I'm never trying to bet 10K on a thing, so I truly don't know what my limits are at a lot of these books. But I would imagine they're lower than a lot of people.
I mean, that's a huge piece of knowledge right there. And like the easiest way to spot someone who's full of shit is I didn't even think of that, but right, a lot of people are posting these pictures of look how much money I'm betting on this. I'm so confident in it. And yeah, that I never thought about that, but that alone just exposes the fact that they don't know what they're doing. Because if they did, especially on one like DraftKings or MGM or something, they would have already been limited. So
Yeah,
now, but what about the other ones now? So those are you got your DraftKings, but what about those like Pinnacle and
Sharp books.
yeah, the sharp books. Now they don't limit you, right? Why would they not limit you if they um
we
if
touched
they
on
know
that.
that you're going to win all their money?
Yeah, we touched on it a bit already, but it is primarily just because they have a fundamentally different model. FanDuel is not interested in having a side in any outcome, essentially. FanDuel does not want to have, their liability tied up on a certain team winning. Whereas the sharp books that, are taking in information that they believe to be valuable and correct, they essentially want to be on a side of the game to the extent that if they don't like the amount of exposure they have on one side of a bet, they might go bet it themselves at a different book to lessen their liability to a certain side. Whereas I don't think FanDuel and the domestic books are ever doing that type of thing. Nor do they have interest in being on the right side.
Yeah,
So
gotcha.
so how do sharp books, what's their model then? What's the difference in their model? Like what do they do to make money essentially?
Be on the same side as sharp bettors. So that's okay. Yeah, I guess I should reframe it a little bit. So if they know that people they consider smart and have seen them win long term want to bet the Nuggets minus 3.5 tonight, they're going to move their number away from that so that the primary group of people that are betting that game at their sports book are not on that side. So if three
So
and a
Okay.
minus three and
they're
a half,
copying. I see. Okay, so they're
yeah.
they're
So if minus
basically
three
they're
and a half is a
taking what the
valuable,
sharps do and going with it. Okay,
yes. And I think
gotcha. Okay.
the what we were talking about with top down bettors kind of gets us a good transition into uh another very important role in the gambling ecosystem, which you probably would call movers or account gatherers or something along those lines. So if you are like a winning top down bettor or even an originator, you most likely don't want to make your bets at a place that has that kind of market influence. So you don't want to go take that 3.5 on the Nuggets at Circa because it is going to move the line away from that thing that you think has value at every sports book, because all of the soft books copy what the moves that the sharp books make. They just do it much slower. And so it becomes crucial. So we've already talked about it's very hard if you're a winning bettor to bet at these soft books, but you also don't want to have, a ton of your action at the sharp books. So it's a bit
Okay.
of
Yeah,
a,
we're
a
good.
tech glitch there, but yeah, so we were talking about with, how difficult it is to make bets at these soft books. There's a very important role in this ecosystem that winning bettors need to use, which is either, getting a lot of accounts themselves at these soft books. So whether it's your wife's, whether you're buying the accounts from someone online, you've already been limited and banned from these places, but that is where you want to, make your bets because they have soft numbers. They have things you could beat, whereas the sharp books are much harder to beat. And if you bet something there and it moves, the rest of the market is going to move too. So if you could get 20,000 a click at one of these sharp books, but you need to get 200K on this game to realize the ROI you need to make a living, then you don't want to bet your 20K there and have the whole market move quickly against you, because you're not going to be able to get your fill. You're not going to be able to get your 200K down or whatever that number is, using pretty high ones. But whereas if you bet it at if you make 20 different bets, say, across multiple different soft sports books using accounts that you got from someone else, that's going to be a much more efficient way to, and probably get better numbers for your bet and get, the amount down you need to. There are also people that are called movers who basically have an established network of accounts and are always being fed accounts and all these types of things, where you send them the bet that you need to make. You tell them, I need 20K on the Nuggets tonight at minus 3.5 or better. They go do what they do. They send you back confirmation of how much they got down for you. And that's basically how you bet. So I would say
Damn,
90,
I was expecting movers to be line movers, not you said movers are like money movers, like guys
yeah,
who like have access to different soft accounts essentially that they can spread out large bets over.
exactly. And yeah, I would say almost 100% of winning bettors that are betting, high amounts to make like a pretty good living, almost 100% of them don't make their own bets because it's just not feasible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is pretty interesting, and the fact that these soft books are actually basically pegged to they're basically pegged to the sharp books, whereas so now the sharp books they're basically pegged to the sharp betters because they're just using the information they get.
Yes.
So
And that's the
realistically,
reason.
like the originators are those really the only ones who are actually taking into account sports metrics and trying to figure out what the actual score is going to be based on the stats of the teams and the players, where everyone else is just kind of feeding off of each other.
Like 30, 40 years ago was like a totally different beast. Like it literally used to be like 9 dudes sitting in a room like, I think the Giants are going to win by 4.5. Like four
And
and a
those
half,
people
you're
still
crazy.
exist. Those people
It's
still
like,
exist.
Yeah,
right. But now it's like, it's just all like data essentially.
Yeah. And what you were
I mean,
talking about with
describing it
the
as a market is more accurate. It's literally like you said, it's the same as like a stock market now. It's like a betting market where it's almost like a financial um a financial instrument or like a financial
well, and more
platform
specifically,
exchange.
it's a peer-to-peer market. So most people think that your goal is to beat the book, which I mean is roughly true, but really if everybody won, the sports books would shut down the next day. So your goal is actually to beat your peers, to be correct when other people are wrong, because they are your liquidity, especially when you're betting those big amounts. You need losing bettors to exist, or people that have the opposite opinion of you in the market to exist for you to have a chance to bet, or else it just wouldn't work. And you were talking about the soft books being pegged to the sharp books. That's why if you've ever, like, you've probably heard of Billy Walters, probably like the most successful gambler of all time. And he did do most of his betting at a time before, well, certainly before PASPA, but before a lot of the kind of market dynamics we're talking about existed. But something he was famous for doing is head faking. So he would bet the opposite side that he actually wanted at a book with market influence. So say he wants to be able to bet the Nuggets at -3, but right now they are favored by 5. He will go bet the other side at +5, knowing that his action will cause a book to move it the other way. So then he might be able to get that book to move it to -3. The rest of the market goes to -3, and he bets 10x what he did to move that line. So you might hear that called like a head fake or, something like that. But that's a thing that certainly happens today still.
That is pretty crazy. That is pretty crazy. I've also heard you talk about arbitrage bettors, basically, who, yeah, kind of similar to the other one you mentioned, but basically they're just watching the lines and they're waiting to see like when the sharp when the sharp books move, they try to get to the bets on the soft books before they do, or they
Well,
try to like make multiple bets on if you've got one book has -3, the other one has -5. They'll try to hit both sides so that they can, no
exactly. Yeah.
matter what, they'll make a little bit. Yeah.
Arbitrage is easiest to think about with money lines. So say a game is very close to a coin flip. So you might have -110 at some places, -115, -105. If you could find plus money on both sides of that game, so if you can bet the Charlotte Hornets +105 against the Pistons, and you could find the Pistons +110 at a different book, you just bet both sides and you're guaranteed to make money. Given it's a very small margin of money, but as long as you could
Mhm.
find plus money outcomes or plus money on both sides of an outcome.
Those opportunities have to be decreasing ever more, right?
Oh yeah.
Just with the amount of automation. Like I'm sure that used to be like a thing more prevalent, but like I can't imagine that you can do that, especially not at like any amount of quantity.
Yeah, it's certainly harder and harder. I think it's probably more popular in live betting nowadays, live arbing, because think of
Yeah.
something like NBA games where a team might be up 20 and end up losing. They might be, you know what I'm saying? So
No,
there's much
no,
more.
dude, the live betting is crazy. Like I've looked at that a lot. Like it certainly seems like they over like emphasize whatever's like currently happening essentially. Like I don't know. Like if you looking at like NFL games, what I do sometimes like, oh, I like this team like -6. Like you wait until kickoff. The other team goes down and scores a touchdown. It's like, all right, you can get them at like even money now, essentially. It's like just off like the first series of the game, which is like totally like non-consequential to like, the entirety of the game.
Yeah, there's definitely too big of swings at times.
So how does that work in the live bets? Is it the same? Is it still the same way during the game, like in the live bets, or is there anything that the actual books are do? Like, is it's still operating exactly the same? They're just
No,
using the information and moving it, or is it different?
their live lines are primarily just automated algorithmic shit.
And those algorithms are based on what's happening in the game, or based on what
Yes.
bets are coming in.
I would say
Okay, or both.
the source of the line movement during live games definitely switches more to just algorithms that are using what's happening in the game and kind of where lines would have been made for past games with similar things happening in them, and much less about actual bets.
I
So
don't.
if you're just a casual bettor, yeah, sorry, if you're just a casual bettor though, would you probably have a better chance? You know, like you said, Sunday morning, would you have a better chance just waiting till the game starts and then getting and jumping on a live bet? You'd have probably better odds of getting it right purely off just knowing the game than you would of trying to bet beforehand, even
I
if
would
it's
say
still not
most
great, but
likely.
slightly better.
Most
Okay.
likely. But I mean, yeah, it's like everything we've talked about where these edges are just getting smaller and smaller. So the more data and the more game examples and live stuff that these algorithms have, behind them, the better they are. And so, yeah, when live betting first started becoming a thing, it was definitely easier to do what you're saying and, find bigger edges while the game is going. For example, I know there was people who made a lot of money betting hockey in third period games where they knew a goalie was going to get pulled, betting the over earlier on because the sports books were for some reason repurposing soccer trading algorithms to use for hockey. And soccer is not a sport where goalies get pulled quite as often or maybe ever. I'm not honestly super certain of that, but I know that was the angle that people took advantage of for a while before it got basically patched.
Yeah, one thing I was going to bring up with the live betting is I was just going to throw this as like a dart throw. I don't know this for sure. I imagine this is how it works though. Is that I bet those sharp books probably do not do live betting. I bet like
Definitely not as much.
the only live bets you can really probably do are on like the basic apps. The basic like
Absolutely.
loser apps.
And I mean, yeah, so like you'll be able to live bet at, these sharper books, but you're not going to be able to live bet player props like you can at,
We do live bet player props. It's crazy. Like and like it's the second half of a game, like some good players will be like, oh, they only need 8 more receiving yards. And it's like, all right, that's definitely gonna happen. Like again, not financial advice, but
no, I mean, I would say I do a decent amount of live betting nowadays, especially, I mean, I'm probably foolish to think that I am identifying something that, they are not or that the rest of the market isn't. But a lot of times you'll have a player in an NFL game who has been targeted a ton. So he's had a lot of balls thrown his way, but has not come down with any or has come down with very few. So then his line gets adjusted as if he is not getting opportunity when he actually is getting a lot of opportunity. It just hasn't come to fruition. So I've I've made some bets that have been pretty good based on that type of thinking where it's more, that's almost like a process over results thing. Like if they're shaping the line based on the results he's had so far instead of the process that's happening, then I think that's definitely something to take advantage of.
So yeah, so it seems like basically anyone who's trying to bet using DraftKings or FanDuel, anyone who's like you were talking about, you got a bunch of people on Twitter saying they know what they're doing. Clearly, no one really does. Yeah, it's highly unlikely that anyone is a successful bettor using these apps, and if they are, they're going to get limited. So, but so with that being known, we've got 35 states where it's legal and $100 billion in money gambled on these apps in 1 year, and it's increasing like insanely. And I'm imagining at this point, the other 15 states are, or at least some of them are probably going to be legal soon. Is it best? I mean, I'm sure some people use it as entertainment, throw $20 here, oh, it's Super Bowl, throw $20 here. But for anyone who's trying to like get into it, is this? I mean, we've talked about this before. Is this like is this something that we should be worried about societally, where this much of our, this is gambling used to be kind of like if you were a sports gambler who didn't really know what you were doing and you were just gambling every day, it used to be kind of like a stigma of like, they'd say, oh, yeah, this guy's a degenerate. And now it's like
Let,
everyone's doing it.
let me hop in there, throw it over to Tommy for his thoughts. Like you said, dude, my dad told me, he's like, Nick, 10 years ago, if you had a bookie, you were a bad person. He's like, you were akin to being an alcoholic or like a
Yeah.
drug user. Like it was like very looked down upon. Now, anytime you're out at a bar, the dude next to you is going to be talking about his 4-leg same game parlay he made with his grandma.
It is insane how quickly it's happened. And I don't know. I mean, it's definitely, I would say it's not good for society, but it's like anything else. Like alcohol isn't good for society and we allow it. I think it's all about education. So I mean, I put myself through it basically. I wanted to do this, but the more I got educated on it, the more I realized that it isn't it. And I think all of these people out there that are being taken advantage of by, people selling picks that don't actually win and that type of thing, they just need to be properly educated. So, I mean, there's other scams in other parts of the world too. There's pyramid schemes, there's multi-level marketing stuff, and a lot of those are successful companies and they're certainly not illegal. So it's like, I believe you should be able to sports bet, but I think there should be definitely much more of an effort on properly educating the public.
Yeah, it always comes back to education, or at least being transparent. Like when you first told me that about the DraftKings CEO, and he says this isn't a place to make money, it's just entertainment. At first, I was like, oh, like what the hell is up with that? But I kind of do respect it that at least he's saying that. Whereas like he's being transparent about it. Whereas like, because I'm sure, yeah, it might be an entertainment app technically, but I'm sure there is a shit ton of people out there who don't think of it as an entertainment app, and they think of it as I'm going to be the next big, I know a shit ton about football, so I bet that I can be a successful football
Yeah,
gambler, and then
it's the funniest shit, dude. Like, I'd say the people who have made the most money on gambling sports in their life probably couldn't tell you a single player on the teams they're betting on. It's mostly that type of shit. And the funniest thing, and I mean, it's not funny, but I think there's a lot of people out there that are selling picks who don't win themselves, and they talk about like, oh, I'm a ball knower, dude. Like, I got ball knowledge. I played high school and college basketball, so like, of course I could beat these lines and that type of thing. And it's embarrassing because they sell that idea to people who don't know any better. And I think I would say that is the biggest problem with this whole gambling explosion is people buying picks from other losers. So losers buying picks from losers, and they just lose together. There's this service called Dub Club, which is almost like a hosting thing for people to sell picks on. And it's just a nightmare. It's just filled with all these losers talking about ball knowledge and shit.
As a societal aspect, it's a tough question. I mean, you should probably have the freedom to be allowed to do it, right? Like
yeah, I would say
having
I would agree
having
with that. Yeah,
having that like taken away, it's one of those things like, oh, we don't trust people enough to allow them to do it, right? Like we know better than you.
Yeah,
It could be like a good policy for a lot of people, right?
no, for
It's kind
sure.
of that question of like do you allow people to kind of make their lives worse if they're not like educated enough and not smart enough if they haven't done enough research into the topic. It's hard.
Yeah, maybe there should be
It should be allowed, but I don't
a
know.
mandatory education, I think, but I don't know where that would come from because
School.
sports books
Sports
would
betting
never,
101.
like, yeah, if the government mandated DraftKings and FanDuel and all these places to put you through a course that talks to you about all of this stuff, if it was successful and people actually listened, like their business would go down a lot. So the sports books and their lobbyists and all of this stuff would definitely push hard against any sort of mandatory education, which is kind of like a conundrum.
yeah. Well, yeah, and I mean, I'm typically pretty much across the board anti-government interference in all of these type of things, and I wouldn't be I think it should be legal. I mean, it's an individual, if your individual choice is to go in and you think you've got ball knowledge, so you're gonna go spend all your money trying to win bets,
Right.
then you got con, but that is on you. You're not hurting anyone else, so I don't think there should be really mandated anything. But I do like the idea of making content like this and having guys like you who are actually aware of the fact that the guy who's posting all his picks and trying to sell them is most likely a con artist. that message can spread more, which I think it will, as more and more people start doing this and start looking into it, and people will figure it out. But yeah, I agree that education is a big
Well,
one.
here's the government mandated part of it. Every time you log on to one of those apps, it says gambling addiction question mark. Call this
Yeah.
hotline and get some help, right? And like every single time you go on, you just hit X, like get me off this, like let me in and let me lose my money, But it
Yeah,
is
yeah.
there, like they throw it in your face, and it's kind of hilarious. Like, oh, if you have a gambling addiction, please call this line, but don't call it too much. We still value you as a customer, and please keep using our product.
I was thinking of it a little bit. This is like a meme example because everybody loves to talk about being forklift certified on Twitter and stuff. But like, if you
Yeah.
want to drive a forklift, you have to do like a class that teaches you how to do it safely and like, the dangers of it and knowledge and stuff. I was thinking of it almost like that, not just like the little pop-up that says, call this number if you want to learn more
Hmm.
about gambling, but like a class you have to take before you're allowed to bet, maybe.
That would be pretty
Yeah,
good. Like you
that kind of
download
makes
the
sense.
app, you have to like pass like a proficiency and like
Exactly.
understanding of what a vig is. Like why is it -110 when you're betting this? Like what does that mean?
Yeah, and just letting you know that like there's a very, 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 very high chance that you will not make money doing this.
Yeah, yeah, public transparency of the actual odds. Like you said, okay, only 1% of people who are betting on this site are making money over. Like if that was a kind of like public knowledge, everyone would be like, oh, like I have a 1% chance of being successful at this. Maybe I should not put all my money into it.
It is human nature to just think like, oh, but that's not me. Like I could do it,
Yeah, I'm in the
Like
1% for sure.
yeah,
Uh,
exactly. Which was me,
Well,
for a while.
I want to
no, with
bring
me
up.
too. I mean, I've been for until we've had conversations like this. I probably spent 2 years thinking like, all right, dude, I'm gonna study all these players and figure out how it's
Yeah.
it's not how it goes, but
No, it's insane. I want to bring up something here. It's kind of an interesting, look into the addiction side a little bit. So I've heard about this experiment that they ran. So they showed a monkey a lever, right? And when the monkey pulled the lever, he like got like a small treat out of it, right? So the monkey learns, all right, this lever, you pull it, you get a small treat. Then they introduce him to a different lever, and this lever, you pull it, most of the time nothing comes out. But sometimes when you pull it, like
Yeah.
so much food comes out, right? Like an avalanche of food. And then they presented the monkey with the choice. Do you want the guaranteed small amount of treat, or do you want the chance at so much food? Every single time they went and chose the huge outcome amount of food with a small
Yeah.
probability of happening.
I
They
think
just like there's something ingrained in your body to like want that like big win essentially.
I
yeah,
think when
right.
they originally did that, like the comparison was to slot machines, but you could see that play out in sports betting all the time. All like most people who win at this stuff are not betting parlays. If they are, it's
I was
because
gonna bring up
it
parlays,
compounds.
yeah.
If you
So
have an
what's a parlay?
a parlay is combining multiple different bet outcomes together. So say like I want to bet the Eagles money line and over in the game together, or like this player over 8 assists and over 10 points parlayed together. It's not that people who win at betting don't use parlays, but they certainly do not use them the way that uh, losing bettors do. And I think almost, I don't know the numbers, but definitely over half of the bets placed at a lot of these soft books are parlays, and most of their revenue comes from people losing those. And that's kind of the idea of the monkey levered experiment, is that
Yeah.
people could go out and bet, much safer outcomes of uh, the Bears to win a game by 7 points. Instead, they would rather bet 15 different player props parlayed together on a thing, just a big lotto ticket, whereas there's roughly a coin flip chance they win that Bears bet, because that's the idea of like the market reaching kind of an equilibrium, is that this like the line would move more if there was influential people that thought there was still value left in it. When a line settles, that's basically saying like people who support either side don't really see value in this, so they're not betting it and moving it more. So that means you have roughly a coin flip chance that you're paying a vig for, which is so, you could lose a lot less money just betting those coin flip chances than you will combining 8 different outcomes together.
Yeah. So one stat I want to bring up here, I've heard that it goes something like this. Sports books, slash Vegas, terms are used interchangeably. Their advantage on the NFL is something like 5%. They typically make like 5% more than they lose on NFL bets. NHL, it's something like 6%. Soccer, it's like 4%. MLB, it's like 5-6%. On parlays, their advantage with that, like the percentage that they take in over what they pay out is something like 42%.
Yeah, exactly.
So if
Part of
you
that is
make
the construction of the parlays these people are putting together, because they do too many outcomes that are, oftentimes just like shots in the dark. It's like, it's that ball knowledge thing where they're like, of course, if I combine these 5 things that seem very likely. So like if a player's main point line is set at 21.5, they'll combine like him to score 10 with, and they'll do that type of thing with a bunch of different outcomes. And somehow in their minds, they think that the pricing, or that's a better way to bet than just like betting aside. It's crazy. So a lot of it is in the construction of the parlays that they have so much higher ROIs, because you have people building very stupid shit. But then a lot of it is just they don't give a fair price. So you can use like
right.
parlay calculators online to see what combining 3 outcomes that are all -110 should pay you. And oftentimes you're going to get a worse price at the actual sports book than what the calculator tells you it should be.
Dude, here's an interesting one. I'm sure you've noticed this, but so say you're making a parlay and you bet on like a team to win. And then if you bet on a player prop of that team to do well, right? So like say over for a guy's points and and his team to win, they'll give you a worse payout than if you bet someone on the other team's points to go over, because
Well, yeah, because you're betting something correlated.
they correlate like, oh, if this guy's winning, this team has a better like odds of winning. So your
For
payout
sure.
will be more if you take like opposite things. So what I was doing for a while was FanDuel was running like risk free like parlay things, right? So I do like a team to win, and then I bet 2 player props on the other team. If those 2 player props hit, you can then bet on the other team to win, and you just have like a guaranteed win.
Yeah, I see.
And
Yeah,
since you bet on like the 2 player props to hit, it like boosted that parlay like way the fuck up, because you're like going with something that's like non-correlated essentially. But then you can then take a risk-free like bet on the other team if those 2 legs have already hit.
I see. Yeah. I mean, something I like to
Yep,
do, which, I
makes
mean,
sense.
this goes against everything I'm talking about with, like you don't know ball, whatever, but sometimes there's certain like receivers in the NFL who have a very low yards per catch, but make a lot of catches. So an example is Wan'Dale Robinson on the Giants. You can make pretty decent anti-correlated parlays on him on over receptions and under yards. And
Mm-hmm.
for a while, the pricing on him was massive. And sportsbooks have adjusted pretty well to the idea that those 2 things are not as anti-correlated as they appear. Because
Right.
just intuitively, you'd think, like, if I'm betting the over on catches, why would I bet the under on yards? Because the more catches he has, the more yards he gets. But sometimes for certain
Right.
receivers, you can kind of thread the needle.
Or the opposite can be true. Someone that's a deep threat, you can say like, oh, I bet he'll
Marvin
have
Mims on the Broncos.
Marquez Valdez-Scantling, right? Like I bet he'll
Yeah.
have less than 3 catches, but more than like 70 yards. One of them was like a 63-yard catch, right?
Yeah.
So
And for a while, those were good bets to make because they were not priced properly. They were being priced as if those outcomes were very, anti-correlated to each other, when in reality, they were like, pretty correlated. Or not, correlated isn't the right word for what they
right.
actually are, but they're just less anti-correlated than they appear.
Right. And it all stems back to it's about pricing inequality. That's the only
Exactly.
way that you can actually win, right? You realize like, all right, they are pricing this like it's very unlikely for these 2 things to happen,
Exactly.
but I don't think it's all that unlikely for those 2 things to happen. Like there's a very good chance that it could happen. So you're betting against their pricing essentially.
That's exactly what it is. And that's the biggest thing. I think that's people who don't know everything we've been talking about. That's the biggest thing they ignore is price. Like to them, it's just, I think this outcome is going to happen. and they have no way to calculate what a fair price is. And they have no, you know what I'm saying? They have no idea how to do that, and they don't even bother to care. Whereas, like, yeah, like you just said, the only reason I was betting those parlays is because the price was wrong, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people, especially if they're not too, if they don't have too much of a background in like probabilities and compounding, compounding is kind of difficult for you to visualize sometimes.
For sure.
Whereas, so what you're doing is you're buying, anytime you're making a bet, you're basically like you're buying some risk, and they've also got the VIG included. And so when if you might parlay something where, say, you have two different bets and you think both of them have a 50% chance, and so you're thinking like, okay, that makes sense that a parlay would be maybe like plus 200 or so, but realistically, it's the compounding effect. The more bets you put in there, it's getting exponentially less likely to hit, and you're also, the payout is also rising exponentially. But the other thing that's not accounted for is the VIG, because the VIG is exponentially rising as well. If you're paying 20% in that VIG, but you're making a 6-leg parlay, well, you're that 20% is compounding, and now you're actually paying a way higher percentage of the VIG that's not even, it's not even part of the odds. And it just makes sense why that's kind of a sucker's bet. The more legs you put in a parlay, it's like you're giving away free
Yeah, you're multiplying
potential money.
probability, not like adding it together or having like the average of it. So
Yeah,
if there's
right.
two
Yeah.
events that have a 48% chance of happening, the odds of them both happening are their probabilities multiplied by each other, which is going to be substantially less than like the average of the two.
Right. And if you're looking at it the way you said, where it's like, okay, if I got a minus 120 line, I'm not betting $12 to win 10. I'm betting 10 to win 10 if it's a 50% chance. And then that 2 is just what I'm paying that to the book. If you're looking at it that way, if you do parlays, then what you're paying to the book is huge, because that's compounding. It's not 2
Right.
plus 2, it's 2 times. Well, if it's 3 times, it's not 2 plus 2 plus 2, it's 2 times 2 times 2. And so you're actually paying, $8 on that one.
Well, that's
Whereas
just
you're,
the pricing thing. So I don't think that's always the case. Like I don't think VIG is
no,
done that way, but it's what we were talking about, where you can go online and use a parlay calculator to see what price you should get for putting these two outcomes together, and the sports book is often giving you worse. Sometimes they're giving you better though, which is the case with like why I was betting those anti-correlated receiver parlays. But now that the inefficiency in their pricing is gone, I wouldn't bet them anymore, basically.
gotcha. What do you think as far as, because I'm kind of to take a conversation a little bit different direction. So I've actually been thinking about this, because I'm surprised that they don't do it. I wouldn't be surprised if they started. But when you look at these companies like DraftKings and FanDuel, like DraftKings is a publicly traded company, so they have basically a responsibility to their shareholders to continue to increase, the volume of bets that is going on. And I do think that, at some point there's going to be less people betting. It might not be for a while. There's going to be, more states legalize it.
Yeah.
It's an addicting thing. People are going to keep doing it.
What was that?
We lost him.
You're back. Oh, now he's gone.
He's gone.
Well, I mean, with what he was saying, yeah, we do have still quite a bit of growing to do with, like, there's so many states still that haven't even legalized, and yeah, I mean, growth within states that have legalized, but eventually I do think there is going to be a turning point where more and more people like me go through this journey of being very interested, thinking you can win, doing all kinds of research and learning, and you get to the point that you're just like, all right, this is not a worthwhile endeavor that I thought it was. So there's probably going to be like, a rise as more states legalize, but eventually people are going to get sick of losing, you would think, and it's just going to go back down to some level.
Sorry, technical difficulties there. But so where I was going with it was that, so these companies, I can see them potentially moving away to also provide other sports related services other than just being able to bet on them. Because I even saw it, I think recently, it might have been like a special thing or something, but it was like, if you placed a bet on the game, then you could watch the game on the app. where, like if you
Yeah.
go,
That's a thing on FanDuel, dude. Like when I was, yeah, like when you're like away from your home and you're like traveling or whatever, you're like sitting at like the subway or whatever. It's like, oh, let me throw $2 on this game so I can like watch it right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
right. And I think where that might end up going is if they make it, yeah, like you said, it's $2. Well, right now you've got a bunch of like, look at like Marquee. It's a channel just for the Cubs. So if I want to watch the Cubs games, I've got to pay a subscription. If I want to watch a single Cubs game, I got to pay a monthly subscription for this
I
channel that's
hate.
only for that. And more and more teams are doing it. I think the Bulls are doing it now. And
Yeah.
that's probably going to keep happening. I could see these gambling apps basically becoming not necessarily just gambling apps. You can gamble on them, but they're also apps that you can watch the games. And rather than paying a monthly subscription for the game, you only have to pay whatever, $5 minimum bet, and then you're not only just paying to watch the game, you might get your money back if you pick the right team, but it's cheaper than paying the subscription for Marquee because I only want to watch this game, or maybe I want to watch 2-3 games this month. I'm not gonna pay $30. I'm just gonna pay $5 a game. Maybe I'll win one or two, and then it'll be
The,
free.
the thing I think about is the broadcast rights. And now that I really like think about it, it's insane that FanDuel has the ability to do that because you hear about, like the NFL renews their broadcasting deals with Fox and, whoever, NBC, and they're like hundreds of billions of dollar contracts. Like, I don't understand, honestly, how FanDuel is streaming some games like they are. And I think that would be a huge barrier for those sports books to get over because I don't know that they have the kind of operating budget that like massive TV networks have to buy those rights.
Yeah, true. That's a good point. That's interesting.
Yeah. Dude, those contracts are massive and that's all like advertising though. So, I mean,
Yeah,
FanDuel has like an unlimited potential to advertise, really. Like it,
true.
so I could see them being able to maybe afford those rights.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine there's some type of deal where it's like, FanDuel gives, the NBA a cut or something like that right now, or gives the, whatever the broadcasting company, they give them like a part of a cut to get the rights to this game or whatever. But I can
Yeah,
see it
that's
eventually becoming, maybe 5-10 years down the line, it eventually kind of becomes an overtake where, the market shifts where all of a sudden now there's people who don't even really gamble, but they use FanDuel to watch their games because it's just more affordable or for whatever
could
reason.
be.
I mean,
I
or
know
even having like
Bally's.
interactions, like they can have, I could see it one where, maybe it's almost like it's like a gambling slash streaming service where, if you watch like, these like Twitch streams and stuff where you've got, you can see the commentary and it's all live and, different people might have different takes and stuff like that. I can see it kind of going that direction. It kind of seems like it's merging that way.
Yeah, and now that I think about it, Bally's is. I mean, they own a bunch of casinos. They have the one here in Chicago where we're at, and Bally's also has. They have the Bally's network that is the host of a ton of local like NBA teams games. So like I don't know one off the top of my head, but say for some reason I keep talking about the Hornets. So like Charlotte Hornets games might just be broadcast on a Bally's network, which is already the case for some.
And then they'd have like maybe a Bally's network, like, a cables channel. And then they'd also just have like,
It
oh,
is, yeah.
download the Bally's app, right. Have a wager on the game, watch it. Crazy.
Yeah, it almost at that point then, if that's the norm, now gambling is just or sports is just synonymous with gambling. It's like part of the same, it's part of the same service. It'd be like, going to a bar. It's like, okay, yeah, you could drink a beer or you don't have to, but that's kind of what you're here to do. It'd be like, all right, if I'm going to watch a game, maybe I don't have to bet, but it's probably,
Yeah.
I could see society kind of moving in the direction where it's like normal to just bet on the game. Why would you watch the game if you're not even going to bet on it?
Yeah, speaking of what direction is moving in the future, do you guys know about betting exchanges like ProfitX or any of those?
Is that like
I don't
That's a
think so.
place
like
that a lot of
person to person?
exactly peer-to-peer exchanges. That's where a lot of people think the industry will go. I don't know how feasible it is because it's much more like trading lingo, and I think people fail to understand it as well. And you can't, make the beloved parlays of 8 different player props, but you do eliminate a lot of the issues we talked about with limiting because that sportsbook doesn't give a shit. Like your bet is between you and another person. They're just facilitating this exchange.
Eliminates the VIG.
It does, yeah. Eliminates VIG, so better pricing, more liquidity. But I don't know. It just seems like they haven't gotten a ton of traction, and
Are
it's a
these
lot more it's a lot more like of a learning curve, I would say, to bet on there.
are these like companies making these, or are these like decentralized platforms?
No, it's like Profit X is like an exchange, and they host the exchange. I think they take some cut of like, essentially almost their vig, but it's not a vig. But yeah,
Just just like a small transaction fee or something.
exactly. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, no, it's interesting.
you gotta take some kind of cut if you have like a platform, like
Yeah,
it's
it's a
just
Yeah, they
business.
got to make money somehow.
uh,
But I mean, that's an interesting thing too. We had one about the blockchain stuff recently, and I could see that maybe becoming a thing, like a blockchain gambling platform where there's no, there's like it'd probably be the same thing, but it's kind of like a decentralized. There's no like central source that's making the lines. It's just kind of
Yeah, and they
cutting
are
out the
ledgers, so
middleman.
it makes sense.
Yeah, really. Yeah, I could see it eventually
I
going that
wouldn't be
way.
surprised if there already is one. Like, I don't know, what is stake? I know
There probably is. Yeah.
stake is a big thing. I know they're like
dude,
very
what
crypto
the hell is
forward.
stake? Because I think they've taken over Twitter.
It's insane. All the yeah, all the videos with like the stake watermark on them that are just
Dude,
random
dude,
stuff.
dude! Every single video on my Twitter feed, it has a community note. This
I
has
know.
unsolicited ad for stake in it. So
Yeah,
like,
It
that is
makes
what
no
it is.
sense.
I just got the overlords. That is what it is. Stake.com gambling, a popular online cryptocurrency based casino and sports betting platform.
But I mean, there's like most basically everything
I mean,
except the
there's a
domestic
lot of
books.
those though. Like, there's a
Yeah.
lot of different sites where you can like gamble. There's like Plinko and shit. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, like
Some of the
Bovada.
stuff they have on there is insane. It's just basically a glorified like actual casino, or I
It
mean,
is
the online casino.
yeah, dude. Have you seen the rocket ship game?
Yes, that was exactly what I was
Have you seen
thinking.
this one, Richie?
No,
So it's a
I don't think
rocket
so.
ship. It starts at the bottom and it starts at like, like 0.00x and it keeps going up to like, 0.5x and you watch it climb, right? And the whole gimmick is you put your wager in and then at any moment the ship explodes. So if you don't cash out before the ship explodes, you lose your money. But so it goes to like 2x. You hit cash out, you win $20 if you bet $10, right? It goes up to like 100 sometimes, right? So
That one
like
is confusing
it's
as hell too. It's
it's
just
the
like a
whole thing. It's
greed
just
test or something.
it is. It's totally just a greed test. It's crazy.
Yeah. And another thing kind of related to that, we were watching Beast Games. That have you seen this one, the Mr. Beast's new
I haven't
Amazon
watched it.
show?
Yeah, I haven't watched
It's
it, but
basically that's kind of the whole thing is it's a bunch of kind of like what's called like prisoner's dilemma, like game theory stuff like that. And
yeah,
it's basically a big greed test between 1,000 people where you can take the money now and screw it and then everyone else on your team is out, and like it kind of interesting psychological experiment to see what
Is it any
what
good?
how people act.
I
It's
just
pretty
kind of
good.
fucking hate Mr. Beast, but I do
yeah,
like
he's weird. I
those
don't.
game
Yeah, it's all
situations.
right. Yeah, it's got some of the games are like pretty interesting, and it's got
Yeah.
like it's a season, so it's like 10 episodes, and it's the same characters. Like a couple characters get say characters, they're real people, but a couple people get booted out each episode,
TV
and
shows. Mm.
yeah. I mean, but it's pretty good. They have it's kind of interesting. It's good kind of psychological experiment, and you know, worth checking out, I'd say. But
The I mean, this is totally off topic, but the amount of views and stuff that Mr. Beast gets on YouTube is crazy. Guy kind of freaks me out.
yeah, it
Doesn't
is
he like
pretty insane.
reinvest everything into like his next video?
So he says, yeah.
That's what he was saying. I think he's taken like a ton of money from his YouTube channel to invest it into this show because he broke like a ton of records. He broke with like the record for like the biggest the biggest prize on a game show. He had like the most contestants on a game show. They built an entire city for all these people to live in while they're on it. It had to be. I imagine the down payment on that show
He
had to
built
be
a city.
insane. Yeah, he built an
He
entire
has
city. He gave like one of the prizes like for this. They do different games and give all like side prizes. One of them was the deed to an island.
That's
Uh-huh.
insane. I almost think that he must have backers, dude, because I could remember when I first heard
Yeah,
of
he's
Mr.
got it.
Beast and he was like popular, but not anything near what he is today. His videos were just like a kid living at his mom's and he's like filling my mom's pool with 1,000 Orbeez and
Mhm.
stuff like that. And almost like oddly quick. And like you're saying, with the the production cost he has, it almost feels like there's someone behind him that propped him up to like the level of popularity he's at and that type of thing.
Yeah, I
Because
could see that.
there's
Seems
big
like it.
YouTubers, and then there's like Mr. Beast. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Where
yeah, right. That dude's
Yeah, it's
just
insane.
like otherworldly.
yeah, and I actually heard him do an interview where he talked about like this is just on the idea that the guy has a ridiculous amount of money that he had to decrease. Like when he does giveaways, they're real, and they want people to believe they're real. And when they were doing like $1 million or the islands, like you're saying, a lot of people question the realism. So he talked about like he literally has to do less money than he wants to give away so that people believe it's real. So like instead of giving someone $1 million, they'll give them like 500K, 50K.
Yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah.
they,
He
they just
offers a
can't
million, they
believe.
don't believe him.
Yeah, it's like me. Like I don't believe that this guy could be giving away $1 million like in multiple videos a year and still like, yeah, I mean, maybe he lives at home with his mom still, and like literally all of the money is going back out, but just
Yeah,
seems
I don't know.
unrealistic.
Yeah, it definitely does. Definitely does. You would think that because I mean, look at the budgets for like these big networks. You know, it's like
Yeah,
why is Mr. Beast the one making this like insanely expensive, crazy game show and not like any of the traditional TV channels or it's like
Yeah, I mean,
how does he have more money than them?
like HBO spent like $10 million an episode on like the Game of Thrones spin-off show. Like, so they have
that's
like
crazy.
100 mil to like dish out, and it's like, yeah, they can't like top Mr. Beast's like.
Yeah, somehow Mr. Beast alone has just taken down HBO for the it's like how does that work? But well, yeah, I mean, anything else as far as it relates to gambling? I think that was pretty interesting discussion.
Yeah, yeah. Closing thoughts here.
But that, like we've talked about it being their highest source of revenue, highest ROI, all these things. And so, of course, naturally they promote that. But like, we need to get rid of this parlay culture. I think maybe something could be done to make sportsbooks stop putting that front and center, giving you all these rewards for betting them. Like they highly encourage people to bet.
Yeah, I wanted to bring that up earlier too. Like every boost that you now get are now parlay boosts.
Exactly.
You'll see ads berated into your skull, like Caesars, the #1 place to bet parlays, and that's like what they
Yeah,
advertise. They advertise like if you make a 5-line parlay, you can boost your odds 20%. It's
exactly.
crazy.
And now we have these parlay only books too, like Prize Picks and like I don't
Yeah.
even know what the other ones are, but that's just a hilarious model of like. And the funniest part is all they give zero fair prices for parlays. Every single how you build like, oh, if you do 3 you get this payout, 4 this payout. Like that is simply not how they should be priced because each of those outcomes doesn't have the same probability. And given that opaqueness, I would suspect that probably every price they give is below what a fair would be.
No, it has to be because yeah, it's like all right, if you have 3 legs, it'll pay out like 4x or whatever. Like four
Yeah.
legs is like 12x, but it's the same every single time. The odds
Yeah,
never
exactly.
change. So it has to be priced advantageously to them. That's the
Yeah.
only way.
Yeah, no, I keep seeing ads for Prize Picks as well. I haven't checked that one out, but I mean, talking about if we call it what it is, it's a it especially for most people, it is not a job. It's just an entertainment thing, and it's an addicting one, similar to drinking. Whereas
Yeah.
if you go into a bar and you're buying a ton of drinks and you're giving all your money to the bar, you're buying a ton of drinks, but you're handling them well. Like you're still, you can handle your alcohol. Maybe you're from Europe or something. Some of these European guys I've seen take down an insane amount of alcohol, or you're buying everyone else rounds and you're making money for the bar. Then they're all about it, But if you and
Yeah.
those would be maybe a good analogy for like the sharp bettors they're betting a lot of money, but they're holding it together and they're having a good time. Not everyone kind of win. It's a win-win. Whereas like some of these the loser bettors would be the guy who's going in there and ordering 10 shots for himself, getting wasted, starting a fight with somebody. And that's the guy, he's going to get cut off from the bar. They're going to tell you you're
They
overserved. You can't do
They
that.
should start doing that in sports books. Like, sir, dude, you're
Well,
overserved. You're
right. There's no
you're-
incentive for them to do that. They want the difference is that a bar doesn't want someone who's overserved in their bar scaring off the other
think
customers, where the sports books want the losers to keep spending their money. You're not going to win.
Yeah.
You're bad at this, but we're going to keep telling you you're good and shoving these parlay ads in your face because we know we got you hooked. so that you're going to
I
keep
think
giving
they
us your
might
money.
actually have that in the UK, where if you go on too much of a losing streak betting on like their legalized sports books, I think they have like a required pause
Yeah,
where
you got to
It's
take
some
a
of
like,
those,
timeout.
bro,
yeah, they
Got to sit in the timeout corner for a
they
little bit.
literally put you in timeout.
Honestly, I feel
But
like that's probably
yeah,
not a bad idea, especially if you're
that
doing rapid bets. You know, like,
it
oh
goes
man, you've
back to
lost
the
enough.
goes back to unfortunately, like, those the bars don't cut people off out of the goodness of their own hearts. They cut them off because they'll be viewed as responsible by the law if they overserve someone
yeah,
and something bad happens to them. So it's like the
Mhm.
sports books also aren't going to do it out of the goodness of their own heart. There has to be some,
No, yeah, of course not. It
right.
would have to be a regulation, I would say, which usually I'm opposed to, but I mean, there'd be interesting thing to think about. I mean, it is a real, it's a real problem too. It seems like it's something. It's like, oh, you can't really get addicted to that. It's not like a drug, but it kind of is. I mean, there's psychological aspects to it
yeah,
where they design these things intentionally to be addictive, specifically like casinos. Like
The
the slot machines and
flashing
everything.
lights, the
Yeah,
sounds, pumping oxygen in. Oh yeah, it's a psychological trap. How about no? There's no 90-degree angles in casinos.
yeah,
There's no 90-degree angles because there's something psychologically in us that's like off-putting. So like if like it's like these like winding corridors that like never actually have to like
it's kind of
turn.
cool.
It's like easier on your mind, right? You hear there's like no clocks in casinos. There's no windows, so you can't see like the time changing out around you.
yeah. Don't they kind of purposely design them to be where they're kind of like hard to navigate, so it's like hard to
Yeah,
get out. It's
yeah.
like,
Yeah,
oh yeah, I got to try to
It's
get
a
out, but I have to
mousetrap
you're like a
walk
rat,
past every
exactly. You're a
single
rat in a
thing.
maze.
Yeah, yeah,
It's kind of the same way like grocery stores are set up. When you go to the grocery store, where's the milk and eggs? In the very, very back. You have to
Mhm.
Yeah,
walk through the candy aisle, the pop aisle, the
never
alcohol
even.
aisle, the soda aisle, the cereal aisle. Then you can grab the milk. Then you can grab the eggs. Then you have to go back around through the produce section, through the meat section. And then right when you get to the front, there's all the little grab and go items. So like, I'll throw that on top as I'm walking out.
I never even
yeah.
considered that with like, yeah, they put the staples as unreachable as possible.
No, it's crazy the amount of like psychological tricks that they put into, and this might be a topic for another episode. We can probably
Yeah,
go
I
deeper
was
into
just
it,
thinking
but
about this. Yeah.
they have like not even just psychological tricks, but just it's almost so like companies that are selling food products at grocery stores have a similar it's a similar dynamic as like paying rent. So like companies will give benefits to the store or they will have to bid like outbid each other in some capacity to have their product placed at eye level on a shelf versus a
Yeah,
little bit lower. And it's like it's all just that's where a lot of the stores make a lot of money is from like these type of like kind of company to company interactions where they're just making deals on so where your product placement will be in the store and stuff like that, which is like something I never even really thought about until I kind of stumbled
yeah.
upon something about it, but kind of crazy.
While we're talking about psychological tricks, this just came to mind. So there's it's basically the concept that you don't even need to consciously see something for it to affect you. So they did an experiment
Yes.
with
Yes.
movies back in the day where they, had a group of people just go see a movie. And in the movie, they put these microsecond flashes of things that said, buy popcorn. Popcorn is the best. You want popcorn. All these different things. And they tested like a control group that they didn't do that to and saw what the popcorn sales were. And I don't know if they used the same group or what, but they did it again where they had the screen flash those little imperceptible things. You don't even realize that it's happening while you're watching the movie, but your brain perceives it in some strange way. And they saw the sales go up like 50% or something. So I'm pretty sure, like, if we learn that kind of thing and there's no like regulation against it, like, what makes us think that that's not still happening in something like, TV commercials, TV shows, TikToks, like, all this social media? I think it's like pretty naive to think that that's not a thing happening.
Yeah, I
Here's,
got to imagine it is like,
here's
what
another
probably
one.
more than ever, I would say. But,
Here's
we
another
feel like
one
you see
for
it.
you. Like, if you're a drinker, right, and you're trying to stop drinking, the anticipation, just like thinking about having your beer when you get home, you get a dopamine hit from that. Like,
Yeah,
there's just so much like things like that. Like, oh, like even without having it in front of you, even without seeing it, even without doing it, just like thinking about it can
it's crazy.
like elicit that response. But
a lot of times the anticipation is more dopamine than when you actually get it, I think.
Yeah.
And that actually, I was going to say this earlier and we started talking about something else, but you mentioned how the experiment with the rats, how, you can touch this lever and you'll get one piece of food every single time you do the lever, or you have the option where you might get nothing or you might hit the jackpot, and it's kind of like slot machines. But that's the interesting thing. And you said it's just like, oh yeah, it's like something about the brain. It wants that big return. I
Mm.
also think something might play into it where it's not even really about that big money. It's about they want the look,
It's
no
to
one
the
would play
idea
slots
of the big money, right?
if if
It's
Yeah.
if
it's
if you played the slot machine and you won every time, it would be not that fun anymore. It's only fun because you might not, or I shouldn't say fun. It's only addicting because you don't know if you're going to win or not. If you're going to win every time, or like they did something. I heard someone talk about how if you placed a guy in a room for a long time and he couldn't leave the room and he was super bored, there was nothing to do, and you gave him $100 in a slot machine, and he can just continue to try to win, or not even a slot machine, say like a game that you actually had to play, and if you do good, you win. And and he could play that for the whole time he was there, see how, and depending on how good he does, he'll win more money. He could put it back in and keep going, trying to build up his money. And eventually there's, if you win it all, you can get the 100,000, or you could lose it all. If you were to do that and you were to give this person the game and he's sitting in a room, he's got nothing else to do, that's what he's going to want to do. Or you couldn't say, hey, we're going to take the game away. We're just going to give you the 100,000. Then he's going to go right back to being bored. He would have rather had the game, probably. Whereas, like, it's not
Yeah.
even about the actual money that you're going to win. It's about the anticipation of the money and the uncertainty that you're going to get it. I think that is
Well,
like
yeah.
a
Like if you
huge
had a
part of it.
button, if you had a button that just gives you money, like it would be awesome. Your life would be forever changed, but it's no fun. It's not like a
Yeah, right.
fun thing to press the button and get money.
well,
Whereas
Yeah,
like
that's
there's
the
some,
idea of diminishing marginal returns. Everything has diminishing marginal returns, right? The first $1 million you get, it's like, oh my god, that's the greatest thing ever. The next million is like, all right, this is still pretty cool. The next one's like, all right, it's not as cool as the first one. You do that 100 times, that last million you get is like nothing.
yeah, the Udals. If you
Yeah,
remember
yeah,
exactly.
micro.
exactly. The Udals. All right, well, is that a good spot to end it, or what?
I
I
think
think
that's pretty
so.
good. Thanks for coming on, Tommy.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me. I think this was
Maybe we'll see you at
super
the
fun.
St. Patrick's Day special if you want to throw down on some politics, maybe.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Let's
I could probably do that.
let's get
A
that
little
one
in
going.
person.
In person one. Yeah, we gotta get festive. Maybe Friday, fun day.
Nice. All right. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
I'm good.
All right. All right. Everyone, thanks for listening. See you next time.